Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Likon Onobanjo, and we begin the news at this hour in West Africa, where Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Olawale Edun, says the last time the economy looked stable was about a decade ago. He made this known on Friday during his maiden press briefing, where he also outlined President Bola Tinubu's vision, agenda, and strategy for the economy. Edun noted that the prevailing circumstances that necessitated the economic growth of the 2010s were not present today. Hence, the government has to allow private funding for certain problems. He listed foreign direct investments and domestic investments by Nigerians as ways in which the private sector can contribute to the president's strategy of economic recovery.
What we met as a team was a challenging situation in managing the finances of Nigeria. But as a strong team, we have immediately set to work to come up with solutions. We're expected to come up with solutions rather than focus on the problem. And one of the biggest is liquidity, is funding. Until the benefits of removal of subsidy feed through, and until NNPC's revenue from oil production going up feeds through, there is a challenge to balance the books, particularly in terms of foreign exchange. But what we can say is that really there is quite substantial sources of foreign exchange in Nigeria.
Now, Olushiji Aino, a development economist and a board member, U.S. Africa Trade Council, joins me for more on this. Olushiji, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
The Minister of Finance affirmed the position of President Bola Tinubu that the nation cannot continue to service its debts with over 90% of its revenue. How does the government intend to solve this conundrum?
Again, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. The most important thing is the Minister for Finance has been able to extray some of the core priority areas of Mr. President as regards economic recovery and how to put Nigeria on the path of economic growth over the next couple of years. It is quite clear that the government is not interested in increasing the debt profile of the country at the moment. And they are looking for opportunities around foreign direct investment, and at the same time to be able to structure or restructure the tax, the way of collecting tax in the country. But most importantly, if they are going to fund a lot of infrastructure, which is very obvious that Nigeria is lacking in that area, then they need the private sector to be able to drive that path. And they also need development partners who can do some off-balance sheet funding for the country in a way that the debt profile of the country will not be will not grow beyond what we can manage. Because at the moment, our revenue ratio to debt ratio at the moment is almost at 100%, and no country can survive, on that rate at this point. So you need the organized private sector and the foreign direct investment, all of them put together to be able to drive infrastructural development in the country, if Nigeria will be restored to the path of growth and economic recovery over the next 4 years.
Let's now quickly take a look at Tinubu's 8-point agenda, and that has to do with food security, ending poverty, economic growth and job creation, access to capital, improving security, improving the playing field for people and companies, rule of law, and fighting corruption. So when you look at all these areas, what are your expectations from this administration?
Yeah, again, very critical. Before when we talk about food security, we need to talk about food sufficiency. And what that simply means is that we should be able to produce what we consume. It is when we are food sufficient that we'll be able to export in a way that we can earn foreign, effect. So at this point, food security has gone to the exclusive release of the presidency because it's now a national security problem. And we need to look at all of those parameters, including access to market, access to finance, access to trading, access to information, the use of blockchain technology to drive all of those smart agriculture in this country. So very clearly, what the president has said is that we all need to go back to work, and the private sector, the small-growing businesses must be involved in the whole of the process to help Nigeria in re-engineering the economic recovery process program of the president. So all of the players within this sector, the agribusiness, all of that must go back to farm. Now, the farm might not be the traditional, conventional way of farming, but there must be need to bring in technology, to bring in infrastructures to support that. But we must increase our food sufficiency. It will amaze you to know that, for example, Nigeria is the largest producer of cashew. Nigeria is the largest producer of sesame seed. Nigeria is the largest producer of shea butter, which is shea nut, and a whole lot of that in the entire sub-Saharan Africa. We must begin to look at that area. And beyond that, all of this produce we made here, like all of these commodities I mentioned, are usually being taken out of this country to the Middle East or largely to Vietnam, where they are being processed before they go into the European market, the American market, the Asian market. So what's going to be happening in the next couple of years now is that we are going to encourage foreign direct investment by encouraging investors to come in the processing department, where they will be able to process all of these commodities, and then we can export directly and be able to earn FX to be able to show our debt deficit, which is largely, in foreign. So this is one area that the president is looking at, which is very critical to economic recovery. Because the moment you're able to solve that food security problem, then you've solved the problem of Nigeria by 50%, because it's very critical. We will not largely depend on import of rice, import of wheat, from Russia, from Ukraine, and the rest of them, but we'll be able to drive food sufficiency and also be able to export. So that's one critical area that the president has emphasized on, which again we have to follow religiously to ensure that all hands are on deck, plus the private sector, plus the small growing businesses, they must be supported. And no wonder he gave about 200 billion to the Ministry of Trade and Investment to support both nano, micro, and the medium enterprises so that they can start businesses and do something better.
Now, Olushiji, no doubt Nigeria has the potential to propel a buoyant economy. When it comes to policy making, fantastic. When it comes to putting it down on paper, beautiful. But when it comes to implementation, it's always a challenge. If you remember, of our former president, that is Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory, had a 7-point agenda. And of course, the past president of Nigeria, that is Muhammadu Buhari, also had an 8-point agenda. Now we have an 8-point agenda. But then looking at this administration, this is where we are as a country. The economy, it's not really looking as good as we expected. So when it comes to critical issues being addressed in Nigeria in terms of implementation and the workability of these policies, how do you think government should address it?
Oh, okay. And I love your perspective and the background you gave. And of blessed memory, late President Muhammadu Yar'Adua is one of the best, if not the best president Nigeria has ever had. He's someone who admitted that the election that brought him into power was flawed. However, he was quite interested in restarting the entire economic process for us to be on the path of growth and on path of progress. But away from that, looking at the agenda of Mr. President at this point, you will discover that between 1999 up until 2015, our economy is driven largely by the private sector. No wonder our economy was growing at about 6% or thereabouts. And at the same time, we had a single inflation percentage in the country then. Unlike now, where our economy is growing at less than 3% and our inflation is at double digits. So what that means is that once you give the private sector an opportunity to drive the economy, to be actively involved in the implementation of the policy of government, then you can be assured that that the economy will move automatically in a way that it can impact lives, it can impact the people, and also we can be able to generate enough revenue to be able to save and cushion the effect of the devaluation of Naira that we are witnessing at this point. So what we have seen in the last 8 years is largely a policy somersault and a mixed implementation of policy between the monetary and the fiscal policy, where CBN had to drive the entire agricultural intervention by this anchor borrower program that they did, where they spent over 2 trillion, and we cannot even feel the impact. Because why? The commercial farmers are the ones getting the funds, why the farmers at the low low belt of the pyramid are not even having access to funds. So what I think the president is doing at this point is saying, we will not implement. We will make policy. We will make ease of doing business, a priority to us. But we will allow the private players to come in with their funds. So there will be a lot of PPP arrangements. There will be a lot of build, operate, and transfer, and a whole lot of those, very critical development finance instruments that will be in place to drive serious economic progress in the country. So what that means is like you will now begin to encourage industries like Nestle, industries like Cowbell and the rest of them to be involved in the dairy product. In other words, they will support farmers. They will bring into the country some of the cows that can give them that high yield milk and all of that. Okay. And a whole lot of others, the likes of Olam. Olam was not as big as it is at this point. Olam started from Nigeria. Today, Olam is a major player in that field all across the world. So you need to build institutions like Dangote, like Olam, not 1, not 10, not 15, not 20, that have the capability to support the small growing businesses at the bottom of the pyramid. And I tell you the truth, if the president is sincere, transparent enough to allow private sector to lead the process, then we're on the path to economic recovery. So that's the whole idea. Allowing private sector to drive it, have a PPP arrangement, a build, operate, and transfer arrangement, and then things will go well. It is obvious and an established fact that federal institutions, governments cannot manage businesses in a way that we can move to the path of growth. And I think that is one fact that the president has established. The private sector will lead it. The public sector, which is the government, will provide the enabling environment, will provide the support mechanism, and ensure that things are done as it should.
Thank you so much, Olu Shiji, for talking to us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.